You know, this time of the year, late summer, and we're almost fall, we're about 3 or 4 days away, when the water temperatures start to drop. And when I say drop, I'm talking about going from those 70 and 80s during the summertime down to 65 and even 60. That's the time when largemouth bass and smallmouth bass start to get a little bit more lethargic. They're still in shallower water, but that's the time to really slow down your presentation. One of my favorite soft plastics to use is made by Case, which is under Fishing Complete. And this is called the Magic Limp Stick. Now, the reason they call it a limp stick is because it's limp. Let me show you here. I'm going to take one out of the package. Beside it being very limp, see the way it's hanging, it's also coated in salt, which I think is a great idea. Now, I'm going to rig this wacky style, and I'm going to use a hook that's weighted so I can fish this a little bit quicker and fish it fast closer to the bottom. I'm going to use probably the best tool on the market. This is called an wacky tool that's right here. And the reason I say it's one of the best ones on the market, it's made out of stainless steel and also aluminum. It's extremely lightweight. You know, there's some on the market that are plastic and they just don't work as well. And you can see that it comes loaded with O-rings. And what I've done, I've actually got a whole bunch of O-rings with me, because a lot of times I'll go through quite a few worms, especially if the fishing is hot, even though the fish are less active. What you do is take one of these O-rings and start sliding them up. You can see that the wacky tool has a taper. So I'm going to slide it up to about, I like to go about 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch from the end of it. Okay, you take your worm, and you'll see that all of the worms from Case Plastic have a collar. So there's the collar there. This collar is just off to one side of the worm. It's not dead center, and that's okay, because it's going to give the worm a little bit of a swimming action. So you place the worm in. I place it to about the end of the collar. That's this smooth part here. And then I just slide the O-ring and slide it on top. So you can see that it's almost in the middle. Now look at how limp that is. Now I'm going to take my hook, my weighted hook. This is actually called a shaky hook. And you can see that it's got quite a large hook. You can either put a plastic worm or any kind of plastic grub right up it. It's got this little bit of a bend, which acts as a grub barb. But all I'm going to do is take that hook and just place it right through underneath the O-ring, just like that. So it's going to sit just like that. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it. I have a little snap here, which doesn't really get in the way. It just makes for easy change if I want to go to a straight wacky hook that's unweighted, or a weighted wacky hook, or a shaky hook like this. So all I'm going to do is put that right on the snap. You can see the wire is open right now. You know, sometimes people don't close it, and when you get my age, sometimes your vision isn't that good. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that it catches, and this is pretty springy, which is great because you don't want to be too loose. Okay, so right now it's closed. So that's the way the wacky worm looks. So I'm just going to toss it out. I want to be about on the inside of the weed line. I'm going to let it fall a little bit, and then I'm going to give it, you can see that the line is tight, and I'm just giving it a couple little jerks. When I give it those little jerks, the worm actually comes up. And one interesting thing when it's falling, because it's so soft, it actually makes this kind of fluttering action on the way down. So it's a very tantalizing action that fish love. Now watch, when I cast this out again, watch the rod tip this time. Okay, when I cast it out, you'll see how the rod tip behaves. Okay, so I'm casting it out, tight line, couple twitches. I'm not really jerking it really far. I'm more shaking the rod tip. See the way it's shaking like that? It's funny because that jig head I have on is called the shaky jig. And I've got the worm rigged wacky. So I'm actually doing a shaky, wacky presentation. Just like that. You know, a wacky rig is very easy to fish. And I would encourage you, you know, especially if you've got a good selection of Case Plastics, you can try the limp stick, this one here, or the wacky jack, which is right here. This is one of my favorite colors, the bubblegum, but you can see the difference. See how one is much stiffer than the other? But look at the wacky jack, because it's thin on both edges, on both ends, it really has a lot of, like, it almost looks like whiskers, you know, where the limp stick, you can see, has more of that slow vibrating action. So the nice thing when you're using a wacky rig is when a fish grabs it, it actually tries to eat it. So you'll actually see your line move to the left or to the right or come at you or go away, and your rod will actually bend. So I would suggest you use a soft traction rod. So you can see this one here, it's called a medium to medium light action rod. And also when you go to set the hook, just keep pressure on the line. Don't do one of these Bassmaster hook set where you jump out of your shoes, because sometimes you can pull the worm right out of their mouth. The more you try to pull on it gently but firmly, the more the bass is going to shut his jaws on it, and you're going to have a nice fish on.